Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Michelle Wakeham, and this is A Healthier Me. And joining me on today's show is a returning guest, Carol Leofonte from Gentiva. And joining her today is Ken Capron from MemoryWorks. And we're going to be talking about some programs that they are coordinating together called Memory Cafes. And before we get to what is a Memory Cafe, I'm going to turn it over to Carol to give us a summary of what Gentiva is all about. So welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Gentiva is a home health agency, and we're nationwide. We specialize in skilled nursing with RNs, LPNs. We have home health aides. We have physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists. We specialize in a few different programs. We have a Safe Strides Balance program. We have an orthopedic program. We have a low vision program. And our office is out of Sanford, Maine. We also have in Maine an office in Bangor and an office in Portland.
So you're all over the place, and wonderful programs that they do offer. And she touched upon one that we actually just talked about in October, and that's the Safe Strides program, the Balance program. And can you give us a brief overview of what's been going on with the Balance program?
Sure. Myself and our PT team lead, as well as our occupational therapists and our other sales liaison, or home health specialists, as we call them, Pam. We've been going out into the community, to the senior centers, to the housing centers through Biddeford, Sanford, and doing fall screens on people in the community. So basically what we do is we do 3 tests. We do a timed up and go test to see how far that person can walk and how they do it, whether they're ambulating alone or with a device, and then we score them. We also do a reach test to see how far they can reach, because basically if you're in your home alone and you have something that you need to get out of the closet, or you need to get something out of the cupboard, you're extending and reaching, so they need to see how far they can reach. A lot of falls happen when people just kind of overextend themselves. Mm-hmm. So we look at that, and then we also do the balance test on the blue foam that we have.
Yes, I remember you bringing that in, and Tatum, she showed us a few exercises that you have.
The blue foam is to simulate different surfaces. So if you are, on a cement floor, that's pretty grounded. But if you go into a thicker carpet, people tend to have issues walking on that. Or if you're outside in the grass or uneven. So we use that to simulate the unevenness of being outside or in your environment, so that you can get strength and improve your muscle tone and everything with the exercises that they do on that. Mm-hmm. So within the community, I think we've done recently about 120 individual fall screens on residents or people in the community. And we have a piece of paper that interprets their scores, or has their scores. We can't interpret them, but we can have them take them to their primary care physician, and they can see how they did and maybe either recommend some strengthening with PT, or maybe even an outpatient therapy, depending on the person and what they may need.
That's great, because given the time of year we're going into the cold, the ice, the snow, which people are more apt to slip and fall. So if it's great to see what their mobility is, what their balance is, to help prevent something like that from happening. So they can go on to Gentiva's website to look into more about the Balance Stride program.
Absolutely, or they can call the office.
Okay.
If anyone has questions or concerns, or even wants to know when our next balance screen may be, they can call the office, and we can look at where it's going to be next, or if there isn't something set up yet in that area, we can certainly do one.
Oh, okay. That's great to know. Thank you, Carol. And our next guest, Ken Capron from MemoryWorks. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me on.
You're
This is
welcome.
an important topic to me.
It is, yes. And upon reading, I was looking at your website, and it's very fascinating. And I think it's a wonderful thing what you and Carol are coming together to
Absolutely.
put together. And could you tell us a little bit about the Memory Cafe and what it is?
Well, let me back off and just give you a little bit of history,
Sure.
and I apologize if I forget some words and stuff, because I have a form of dementia, of memory impairment, which I've been dealing with for a long time, and it's starting to catch up with me. But for people who aren't aware, dementia is and Alzheimer's and all those forgetful moments are not a natural consequence of aging, contrary to popular belief. So I wanted to get that out of the way, because people generally believe that as you get older, your memory gets worse, but there is really no connection
Oh, interesting.
medically.
Okay.
And memory loss, or dementia as we call it, is strictly a medical illness, not a mental illness. Big difference. So I
Big
wanted to kind of cover that up front. But what I found was, when I belonged to a support group just for people who had memory impairment, as the group was fading out, we needed to continue some way to bring people together so that they could interact with other people without any of the stigma that goes along with quote-unquote dementia. And so a friend of mine in Biddeford area and I set out to set up a couple of memory cafes. Now, the model for the memory cafe concept comes out of the Netherlands and Great Britain, England. Over in England, almost every town has a memory cafe, and it's funded by their national health system. Here, it's in a few towns that I've been able to get to, and it's funded out of my back pocket. So we're working on improving on that, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it's a place where it's an opportunity once a month in each location to spend an hour or two just talking with people who have either dealt with it or are dealing with memory impairment of all types, whether it's Alzheimer's, which is 40% of all dementias is Alzheimer's. But there's 50 different types or more of memory impairment, different causes, different diseases, and many of them are manageable. But as you experience memory impairment, you just tend to become more isolated for a couple of reasons. One is people don't know how to talk with you anymore, and so they start backing away. Also, you start to become cognitively aware that you're making other people uncomfortable, so you tend to back away. And what happens is this ultimate isolation, what I call OT, which is Oprah therapy, where you sit and watch Oprah or Dr. Phil or the doctors or whatever all day instead of doing something proactive, because there's no place to really go and just hang out. If you go to a senior center or to hang out, you're kind of ostracized. There's still way too much stigma around anybody who's different. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about a generation of people who are well immersed in diversity. So they become isolated. So what we did was we said, well, let's do this thing, a couple hours once a month, set up a couple of locations, and we'll just sit around and have coffee, and we'll talk. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of what I call triggering, which is, as you're conversing, a lot of different words will trigger memories in a person's mind, and often they will react to that in a positive way. Even if they can't be part of the conversation, they can certainly, they have some cognition still going on inside, mm-hmm. Some more than others.
It's like a verbal therapy.
It is, yes. And in actuality, on the level of therapies for memory impairment, certainly conversation, socialization is one of the stronger stimulants for bringing back memories and restoring memories, reigniting certain channels of memories. We know that, for example, the longest lasting memories tend to be around music and images. But the conversational memory is so important because it really can trigger a lot of thoughts along the way.
Absolutely.
That's critical because the more you can trigger those thoughts and the longer you can keep those thoughts cycling,
Absolutely.
it is a great way to kind of stave off the inevitable.
Well, it's exercising the mind, you know.
Absolutely.
So you keep using it. If you
Absolutely.
don't use it, you lose it. What's that saying goes? You know.
It's amazing when you can sit around a table at either a cafe or somewhere where someone does have the dementia or Alzheimer's disease, and when they actually can remember or come back to it, just to see how engaged they are, even if it's just for a split minute or less, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, especially for people who can't actually participate in the conversation, they're sitting there listening, and you suddenly see these reactions on their face. And it reminds you that there is actually some real serious cognition, some thinking, some awareness that's going on inside. And if you're like me, you just wish you could know what that is. It's like wondering what your dog is thinking or your cat is thinking. Wouldn't you just love to know why the cat is meowing right now?
It's true. Yes.
Like, I want to be fed, or I got to go to the bathroom, one or the other.
Let me out. Yes.
And sometimes that is actually a communication mode. So, but there's a lot of different varieties of the memory cafes, and I think one of the things that has impressed me, and I say this in all sincerity, is Gentiva has been a truly active partner in keeping the interest alive and helping to grow it. I mean, they're really connected to, like in Sanford, the Trafton Center. We did a small expo there, and there was a lot of people who showed up and asked questions, and they really outreach a lot. We're even talking about getting them involved in the Portland area because we're going to be setting up 4 cafes in Portland, and they've got a Portland office, and they're right there. So great partners.
Fabulous. That's great.
And it's important to mention that because, for example, Carol and Pam both are not only verbal supporters, but they're also out there getting signs up and getting literature printed, and they design their own handout and stuff like that. That saves me a lot of time and effort. Because that's always been an issue. When it's coming out of your pocket, you get kind of stingy.
Oh, yes. I'm sure.
But I think we're fortunate in having Gentiva as a partner. I know in the Sanford Springville area, Carol's also been very supportive of another memory cafe, which is the Anchor Senior Residence on I can't remember the name of the road, but it's Route 11A.
Oak Street.
Oak Street. And so she comes to that one too, which, it's nothing that she has any ownership in, but she knows that those people are people that she's dealing with at their cafe at the Gentiva office. And so the long-term objective is to provide, I'd like to see a memory cafe in as many towns as possible. As it grows, certainly moving north and more rural, this becomes even more valuable because people in rural areas are just already isolated.
Absolutely, yes.
Even if they have a social life, they're already isolated. But the more remote you get, the worse the isolation is.
Everything is so sporadic and spaced out. Yes.
I mean, there's no place to go even if you wanted to go.
No, exactly.
So we hope to expand rurally as well as getting the things in the cities set up. So.
Great.
We like to try to do 4 or so in each area because we do one the first week of the month, second week of the month, third week. So each week there's at least one cafe to go to, and we're slowly working on that. We've got 2, Springvale and Sanford. Yeah. We've got 2, probably going to 3 in the Kennebunk area. We've got one at the at Elements here in Biddeford, and we're doing one at the Monarch Center, the VNA home nurses in Saco, and then Monday I should say, I was at the Paul Hazelden House, and they just loved the concept. They've been meeting once a month anyway, so they're kind of looking to adopt that program. So that would be 4 in this area, and as long as they're spaced so that there's one a week. Fantastic.
You're finding that people are pretty receptive and you're getting good feedback and...
This is the challenge. This population has been isolated for so long and nobody's really done any research, reach out to kind of bring them into the fold. So there's this stigma that's in the way of just general acceptance.
Okay.
And I can tell you a couple stories, and I think your listeners would be interested in this.
Sure.
But this relates specifically to Biddeford. There was a lady last year from Portland who called up and asked about memory cafes and said she'd like to go to the one in Biddeford. And I said, well, I told her when it met and everything, and then she said, well, my biggest problem is transportation because my sisters who live in Biddeford don't want me to go to the one in Biddeford because they don't want people in Biddeford to know that they have dementia in their family.
Oh.
I was surprised
That's
when I
sad.
run into that. I get surprised that we still, I thought we outgrew that
Yes.
growing up. But then we see, like in some of the facilities that we've had, where some of the residents of the facility attends the memory cafe, and then other people see that they're going to the cafe and it's for memory issues and dementia. And of course, the old stigma around dementia was that it was a mental illness. And so they start making fun of people who are going to the memory cafe, and so the people stop going because they don't want to be made fun of.
Oh my
But
goodness.
that was a big surprise when we started this of trying
surprised
to
as
get people
well.
to come out.
Yes.
So we're still working on trying to desensitize, much like cancer was in the 60s and 70s, of trying to get rid of that stigma that it's something really mentally wrong with you, because it has no mental illness connection at all. I mean, some people who have dementia have mental illness. Politicians, for example.
Ken.
Behave.
But I mean, so it can be coexistent, but it is not a mental illness. Doesn't mean that somebody's crazy. That they're generally not going to act crazy unless they get to a very advanced stage of Alzheimer's, for example. They may, but at that point they're not out in the public anyway. Right. So overcoming the stigma of the past, and I tell people, my great grandmother, and I feel there's sort of a hereditary link here, because I know my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother all had memory issues, but when she became old and senile and I don't know if the right word was fragile, but she was assigned to the state mental hospital in Massachusetts. That's the way they used to deal with dementia.
Wow.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Family didn't have to do the caretaking, and so there's still this lingering impression of memory loss and dementia. The dementia is a terrible word to begin with. It means you're out of your mind, which is not what the case is.
Really? That's what it
Yeah, I mean,
stands
that's
for?
the Latin.
Huh, okay.
So we're constantly up against this stigma in getting people to come. Now, what's really rewarding is the folks who can get past that personally and show up, really have a good time. And I'll be honest with you, they're intended to be anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. But yesterday we had one at Anchor Senior Residence in Springvale. Started at 2 o'clock. Some people didn't even show up until 3, but we ran till 4:30. Which
Great.
was much later than I had planned on staying, but conversations in any social environment tend to just kind of grow on themselves,
Yes.
and we do these tangents off to one side or the other, and suddenly you got 4 conversations going in the room, and you know that something positive has happened.
Absolutely.
And for
that's a
people
good
that are
feeling.
stuck in their home and don't get out very often or hardly ever, going to these cafes, you don't have to speak up. You can just be there to listen. If you want to speak up, perfect, great. But it's just to be around people that can kind of connect with you because you have similar issues going on.
Right.
So it's really, I think it's a great thing.
It
that you're
really
doing.
is. It really is.
And it's just a start, because the awareness or getting people involved is just a start. This actually is intended to benefit the person who has the dementia. There's obviously impacts on the caregiver, and there's a real big issue that we're facing and going to be facing more than ever, and that's what we call the sandwich generation, where you have somebody who's not only got kids at home that they have to take care of, but now their parents, when they become less able to care for themselves, are moving back in with their kids. So you have an older generation to take care of and a younger generation to take care of, and you're stuck in the middle working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, basically. And that has created a lot of, we're going backwards in time to when there were 3 or 4 generations in a house, but we weren't necessarily raised with that concept in mind. We were sort of raised that the American dream is you work hard, you get your house, and you go out and live on your own.
Right.
And nowhere in that equation did it say, and your parents move back in with you. Oh, and by the way, your kids may move back in after college too. So,
exactly.
It seems like a lot of people are feeling trapped by that.
So this kind of gives them a little outlet to socialize, get out, but also for the caretaker to see what goes on.
Eventually, we'd like to see the cafes also serve as what we call respite. As maybe if we could figure out the finances for it, would be to have somebody who's at the cafes who can provide some level of care. They have adult daycares that will, it's like dropping your kid off at a daycare for kids. You leave them all day and you pick them up at the end of the day. But this is just a little break. Let's say you got to go to the grocery store. It'd be nice if there was a memory cafe. You could drop somebody off, go shopping, and come back, pick them up, and then go home.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be, and we've had some of that. We've had some people who did that, and it's worked well. But you have to obviously be concerned about the level of progression for the dementia,
Right.
because it will get to a point eventually where persons can't control their own body functions and may act up in some cases.
Right.
Which is another thing that I talk about, and I know I've talked about it a little bit with our cafes at your office, and in other presentations. But how does the person who has dementia feel in any given environment? And I'm very conscious of this because there's a strong tendency. Let's say this was my daughter and she was taking me to the doctor, and I wasn't able to speak for myself. So the doctor would talk entirely to her as if I didn't exist.
Yes.
You talk around people. And I understand why people do that. It's a natural inclination. But you have to assume, people are assuming that I don't have any cognition at that point. But the truth is that I have feelings still.
Absolutely.
I have awareness. I still have a desire to control as much of my life as I can, but everybody's talking around me. You go sit at a table and with some friends, and suddenly the friends are doing one or two things. They're either trying to treat you like a kid, oh, can I help you with your spoon or whatever, rather than letting me struggle with the spoon. They want to do it for me. That's often a challenge to figure out what the right way is. But more importantly, I may be sitting there and nobody will talk to me. They'll talk around me as if I didn't exist. That is very painful for those who are experiencing inside. So having some level of dementia and having some experience with that, I think I have a little bit of an advantage in talking with folks who are dealing with it from both sides, because I'm my own caregiver too. Carol lives alone, I live alone. I guess we're just both undesirables, but
Well, I highly doubt that, but
but I mean, so I guess as Dr. Phil would say, from all of my Dr. Phil therapy, but some situations take a hero. Somebody's got to step up and start speaking up, and so this is an effort to try to give a voice to people with dementia. This is an effort to try to improve the services and the interaction of people with dementia. There is nobody else who's speaking for this group on a grassroots basis. Most of the advocacy is for caregivers. So they have caregiver training and they have caregiver opportunities.
it's true. You do hear more of how to handle patients with dementia or whatnot, but it's not focusing on the person, on the individual going through it.
And there's I've heard of this in several conversations, but there's this tendency to do things for somebody who's struggling rather than allowing them to struggle. We're always fixing people. And sometimes it's best for that person to continue to try to struggle till they figure out how to do it themselves. So we need to kind of walk a fine line between just taking over, which I can tell you, anyone who's still got cognition going on inside, that's very upsetting.
I can imagine how frustrating it can
Yep.
be.
And so, you know, if you're inclined to just take over, be prepared for the consequences, because there's nothing more aggravating than to be told in action that you're useless now.
Right.
Especially if you're going to be around for another 10 years, you don't want to be told.
Absolutely, no, absolutely
useless.
not. Right.
So that's one of the things. And of course, you know, for people who are looking at going into a facility, they want to know that the facility they're going into doesn't treat the patient as if they're less than. They want to try to give the patient as much involvement, as much, you know, one-to-one interaction as possible, and not wait till the caregiver shows up once a month or once a week to visit their relative.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of the facilities, at least around this area, have really stepped it up, and they are looking at that as a whole person and what makes them tick, in a sense. And they design different programs, whether it's with the activities or with the nursing staff, CNAs, what works for that person. So they're really,
it's
they're starting to
individualized.
focus on that more.
Yes.
Well, there are a good number of the facilities do specialized training on dementia care, and they have dementia care professionals, quote unquote, that are certified. We actually are going to be offering a course on dementia care professional training because we want to bring up the level of care for people with dementia, the level of understanding. So there are a lot of people who have taken a proactive approach and trying to do something about that before problems occur.
Which is the best way, best approach, absolutely.
But one of the big other things that I think the memory cafes can do, and now Carol's really good at this, is letting people know what their options are. Even people who are high functioning or have a caregiver get lost in this system because there are so many options that are available that nobody knows about. And I've been studying this for 2.5 years now, and trying to figure out all the ins and outs. And every week I'm discovering something new. And it's like, why didn't anybody bother to communicate that there's this or that or what have you? And I just continue to be amazed at what services are available and who's doing what to whom. And we've run into people, for example, who don't get hearing aids because they don't have the resources. But with a little digging, you find that there is grant money available for that, so that you can help people who have hearing problems get the hearing aids that are, in many cases, thousands of dollars.
It's expensive.
They can be, or you can get the $35 version, which, you know, is a big round cone-shaped thing.
Maybe a new trend, right?
Yeah, well, you know, you never know. Things come back in time.
Absolutely.
So it's hard to describe all of what it is, but memory cafes can be what people want it to be.
So depending on the group and the cafe, some people may want guest speakers on certain subjects.
Oh, what a great idea. Okay.
Or they may not. It just depends. They may just want to be there just to socialize and really not.
When we say guest speakers, like maybe someone from the medical field.
Or a social worker.
Social worker.
Long-term care planning.
Oh, okay.
Lawyers, elder law
lawyer.
attorney, really good source of information, because most people just go on the medical end and they don't pay attention to the legal and financial end.
And that's important as well,
That's
too.
huge.
Yes.
It's huge.
So you're doing a really fabulous thing here.
Well, we've got a lot of things going. We've just recently formed a coalition of which Carol and Pam are part of, Dementia Care Coalition of Southern Maine, to try to really address some of the issues that are going to result from the silver tsunami. The baby boomers who are moving into this
The silver tsunami.
silver tsunami. Yes.
Gotcha.
Well put.
And there are substantial economic impacts for Maine, for the nation, even worldwide. Aging is going to create a unique problem that will probably not occur again for ages. But we've got a huge population of people who are going to move into the 65 to 100 age group.
Yes.
They're going to need extra care for 20, 30 years, and then they're going to pass, and there'll be this big drop in population. So, for example, the population of Maine right now is about 1.3 million. In 30 years, that will probably drop below 1 million. And that has severe economic impacts.
Oh, I bet.
Because businesses are set up for a certain size population, they can handle that workload, but suddenly now you have less work, but you still have that big plant that you're trying to maintain, and suddenly it's not
Can't do it.
working anymore.
No.
Yeah. So there's a long-term problem, there's short-term problems.
Yes.
My philosophy is that we got the memory cafes going. We'll use that as a foundation for reaching out to people who need the care, but there's a lot more that has to be done behind the scenes, not just for dementia, but for aging in general. I mean, everything we do related to dementia has some benefit for the aging population too. So we're building. We're just trying to do something that other people haven't done or maybe not done well. We'll get there.
Absolutely. Like I said, this is a really great thing that you have going here, and you definitely have a wonderful partner helping you out. I mean, she's fabulous.
Absolutely.
And,
I did want to mention, though,
sure.
If you don't have dementia, if you don't have Alzheimer's, if you just have memory loss, you're welcome to come to any of the cafes. Even if you just want to even get educated about it, certainly stop in.
Okay.
The most popular handout that I give out at memory cafes is there's a set of 5 memory screening tests that are available online, but I've printed them out, and you can take them and go home and do the test behind closed doors or whatever.
Oh, interesting.
To give yourself a sense of whether, am I imagining my memory loss or is there something real I should pay attention? We find that most of the time doctors do a thing in their office called a mini mental exam, which basically is very simple, and you have to draw a clock and put the hands at 10 and 2. And my philosophy is that if you fail that exam at that point in time, you're quite a ways along in the issue. If you can't draw a clock with hands at 10 and 2, you've gotten past a certain point, and we'd like to catch that well ahead of that point. Prevention, early intervention has a great deal more significance with memory impairment than it does with many other diseases.
Okay.
So, and not just on your own health, but on costs.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's a good point.
I don't know if
Very good point.
Carol's mentioned, but the average assisted living facility is anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 a month.
Oh my goodness! I think we might have brushed up our first show. We might have brushed upon that, but yes, it's astronomical.
Yep.
It's expensive.
The key is to get educated and not wait until there's a crisis.
Yes, prevention, like you said,
Yeah.
it's key. It's key.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. Our time is about up. Is there anything
it?
else you'd like to add before we
No, thank you so much for
before we
having me
close the
again.
show?
No, but if people want to reach us, I'll make a presentation anywhere, anytime. I love speaking about this because of my perspective. But if you want information, just give me a buzz.
Absolutely. We do have Ken's information for anyone at home watching. Ken's information will be on the screen.
We have a website.
At the end credits, and his website will be up periodically throughout the show. And at the end credits, would you like to give the audience your website?
Yeah, they can take it, please. It's just too much. No, it's just http://memoryworks.org.
Perfect.
It's that
Thank
simple.
you. And all the information regarding the memory cafes will be on there. And for any other information you'd like, just feel free to.
We could certainly use some volunteers. We've just begun to reach out for donations and stuff, so we're new to that end of things, but we have some real neat ideas for fundraising
Excellent.
for the future, and hopefully
Great.
we'll get that going in 2015.
Well, great. It's been a pleasure having you both.
Thank you.
And I welcome you both back anytime. Feel free to come back. I'd love to talk to you. Anything else that you have in the works or any upcoming memory cafes or just to get the word out there, I'd love to have you back.
Well, I want to remind people that we have one right here in Biddeford at Elements
Sure.
once a month.
Okay, Elements once a month.
And you have to check the website because I can't remember.
Okay.
I know it's at 11 a.m., but
Okay.
also some of those cafes have free lunches.
Really?
So-
Oh, well, people love food, right?
Absolutely. Well, there was nothing more surprising than lunch at the Memory Cafe at Huntington Common when they served coconut shrimp.
Ooh,
Whoa.
I love coconut
I was
shrimp.
surprised.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Bonus,
we
right?
get TV hosts there. So anyway, people are always
great.
welcome. You can drop in. You don't have to be there on time. You don't have to leave on time. With just no rules.
Great.
Just have fun.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you both so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving.
Adios.
You as well.
Thank you. And to everyone at home, thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in learning more about the Memory Cafes or Gentiva, both websites will be up on the screen during the end credits. And thank you so much for watching. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.